we've offered to expand that from our 18 minutes to basically give them both together that 30-minute window. So, Pat Brown, if you would.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks. Yeah, we were excited to bring Rob Jones and Oksana Masters in. They are on the national adaptive team, and I've been lucky to be one of the assistant coaches for the adaptive team for the last 4 years. And I also think that this talk they're giving is fitting because just yesterday there was an article in the paper about how legislation is now being written that says that schools, high schools in particular, have to now make accommodations for adaptive athletes who want to participate in any sport. And so you may currently or in the future end up finding yourself working with an adaptive athlete. So the timing of this is perfect. It's been really exciting to watch the sport of adaptive rowing growing. The first time it was featured in the Olympics was in Beijing, and when we first started trying to recruit athletes, we were having trouble trying to get adaptive athletes in particular to come over to the sport of rowing, in particular because most of those athletes are getting chewed up by a lot of other sports that they're much more familiar with. And so it really is nice when we have two true athletes, Rob and Oksana, come into the program less than 2 years ago and participate at the level that they've been at. And I don't want to spoil it for them because I'm sure they'll mention in their presentation, but it's been really great to watch them come up and see them perform in London with such great results. So I'll turn it over to them, Rob Jones and Oksana Masters.
Well, Pat just took everything I was going to say, so. First, I'd like to thank Pat and Concept 2 for having us out, and also Mike for having us out here, and you guys for coming to listen. We have a little bit of extra time, so I kind of wanted to go into my own personal backstory, how I got started into rowing, how I became like how I am now, and then I'll let her do the same. But I joined the Marine Corps in 2006 in my junior year at Virginia Tech. I went on to graduate from Virginia Tech in 2007. And after I graduated, I volunteered to go to Iraq. I went to Habaniya. That was in 2008, from January to August. And then we came back from Iraq, and I got word from the underground that there was going to be a deployment to Afghanistan, so I volunteered for that as well. So I spent a year after my Iraq deployment just kind of hanging out, got a job. And then the Afghanistan deployment came up in 2010. And I was a combat engineer in the Marine Corps. And for those of you who don't know what that is, there's a lot of different facets to combat engineering in the military. Part of it is construction. Part of it is working with stuff on the flight line, which is airports and that kind of thing. And then the third facet, which is what I did, is dealing with explosives and using these explosives to pretty much most of the time just get stuff out of your way that's in your way. So we used it for a lot of breaching of doors or breaching of walls or trees or pretty much anything that got in our way, including IEDs. So because combat engineers also deal with landmines historically, they thought it would be good for us to be the ones to find IEDs that are buried in the ground. And how we do that is we have a metal detector because most IEDs have some kind of metal in them. I say most because there are some that don't. Use a metal detector, and these two things right here is the primary means of finding these things. And this. And for me, my foot. But it was in that regard, we were in Sangin, Afghanistan in July of 2010. We were pushing through some tree lines that supposedly had a lot of IEDs in them. So we were using these things called line charges, which is a 90-meter line of C4. So we would launch those things out of this truck and it would explode. And when you have a truck like that, you have to have people on the outside of it to protect it. And we were just going through, we had just taken a little break. It was hot, so we took breaks every now and then. And we got up, and somebody stepped on an IED. Now, this guy was lucky because the person who put that in the ground didn't know what they were doing, so it didn't really go off. What went off was just this little blasting cap. And so my job when that happens is to get through where we're going, be the first one, make sure wherever we're going to go is clear so nobody else steps on anything. And that's what I was doing. Unluckily for me, the guy that put my bomb in the ground knew what he was doing, and it did explode. So that resulted in double above knee amputations for me. Luckily, nothing else. My hands and my eyes are all fine. So I went to Walter Reed Army Medical Center and started learning how to walk again with prosthetics. And that was a really slow process, kind of like everything when you're learning it. I put my legs on, and I was still a little sensitive from the blast, the trauma, and there was probably about 6 weeks until between the blast and when I first started walking again. Still a little sensitive, so I could really only keep them on for about a minute at a time. So I would get into therapy, put these on, stand around for a minute, and then I would sit back down. And that was it. That was pretty much all I would do. And every day, though, I would try and stand up for another second or 5 more seconds or however long, how much longer I could stand up for. I just made sure that every time I stood up, I was up for longer than before. And that's kind of the same thing that I do with rowing, or when I was first starting. You know, I went out and I could kind of paddle along a little bit, but I just kind of tried to improve every single time I went out. And eventually, you know, we went to the Paralympics and everything. But the way I got started into rowing was I used the rowing machine a lot before injury, just for conditioning. You know, I would just do hard intervals or something. And so I knew the sport was hard, and I knew I wanted to do a sport. I just didn't know what, because part of losing my legs below the knees, I felt kind of limited to, I wasn't really sure what I'd be able to do. And I really missed being able to get into the gym and being able to push myself really hard. So I tried to find this sport that I wanted to do. And I looked up rowing, and just so happens there was a club in Washington, D.C., which is where the hospital was. So I went out to the club, and I learned, and pretty good at it, I guess, when I first started. It's decent. And I just kind of kept doing it. And eventually I was partnered up with her, and we went to this race called the Biata Regatta. It's in Philadelphia. It's an all-adaptive race. And we took on the current national team that was there, and we only lost to them by about 10 or 12 seconds. But in our defense, we had only rowed together once or twice before that.
Yeah, so not even a total of an hour together on the water, really.
So we thought, yeah, that's pretty good. And then I personally, her counterpart in the boat didn't even race in the single, and I lost to my counterpart by about a second or something. So we were pretty confident that we could have a go at it. So we decided to, that's what we decided to do. We moved down to Florida, and we had to go at it. And I'll stop there, so I'll let her tell her story a little bit before I keep going.
Oh,
I don't want to take all the time, yeah.
That's okay, I've got this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so my name's Oksana. My background and how I got into rowing is I was originally born in Ukraine, and in where I lived in Ukraine, there was like frequent nuclear radiation leaks that would go off, and so that was the cause of my birth defects. I was born with legs, but they were missing like the main weight-bearing bone, and so when I was adopted at 7, came to America, my adopted mom decided to amputate my legs because it was going to be a better life. So my first amputation was when I was 9, because she didn't want to adopt me and take me from what was my home, and I didn't speak any English, so she didn't want to take me away and like not speak any English, wake up with no legs in America. For some reason she thought that wouldn't be good with me, I don't know. But And then I had my second amputation when I was 13. That was a little rougher because that was when the first amputation was made, the decision was made for me. The second one, I had to decide when I was ready to take off my leg. And at 13, no child should have to decide when you're ready to take off your body part. But between those two amputations, I started rowing when I was in middle school, like my last year in middle school. And I loved it. I did it on a slide seat at first, and then I had my second amputation, and then I started rowing without my legs. And I've been rowing about 10 years. I loved it for about, I guess, maybe four or 5 years into actually rowing. My coaches at Louisville Rowing Club saw more potential to go into like a higher level, I guess, type rowing for the Paralympics. So I started training with that, and yeah.
I kind of wanted to talk about seeing as how, just like what Pat said, there's this new law about the disabled sports in high school. I thought it might be a good idea to kind of introduce you guys to our side of rowing and how it might be different and how you can kind of get a good starting point if you do ever happen to have an athlete with a disability. Yeah. So Paralympic rowing, maybe we'll click through this slideshow too.
It's hard to describe.
Yeah. So Paralympic rowing there isn't a whole lot different about it besides equipment. There's just different equipment pretty much. All the intensity is going to be the same. We're still athletes. As long as the heart and lungs is okay, then there's really no reason you can't do the same intensity, same volume. It always just depends on the athlete. There are 3 different weight classes. There's the legs, trunks, and arms class, which is extremely similar to just a regular able-bodied rowing, except every person has some sort of, I don't want to call it minor, but it's... Well,
in the LTA4, there's 2 of the rowers have to be blind rowers, and 2 have to have a physical impairment of some sort.
Right, so for example...
With a coxswain in the boat, too.
For example, we saw at the Paralympics there was a girl that was missing part of her arm from the elbow down. There were single amputees that could still use their other leg. And then there were more minor stuff like, I think one of the guys in our boat had clubbed feet. And one of the girls in the Great British boat had a fused ankle and a fused wrist. So there's basically just something that makes them classify for the Paralympics, and then the visual impairment as well. So all the rigging and oars and all that stuff is pretty much the same for the leg, trunk, and arms class. The boat's the same. The distance that we row is 1,000 meters as opposed to 2,000 meters. And then there's also the trunk and arms class. That's what we are. And that is basically, you can only effectively use your trunk and your arms to move the boat through the water. So double bubney amputations would be an example. Spinal cord injuries, where you only have good control of about here up. Now the big differences come with the trunk and arms and the arms and shoulders only boat classes. So as you can see, it's a fixed seat, so the seat does not move, and you can kind of see that she has a different setup than me, but basically you can get these square Wintec seats that are about like this, and they slide into the boat, which is a recreational boat, is what we race in. And you have to have some sort of strapping to strap your legs down. And yeah, so you sit on the fixed seat. And then as far as rigging goes, we rig our boat a lot narrower than an able-bodied boat. And I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but we actually have to, we use, yeah, 157 and something like that, somewhere in there.
And the arms are shorter too.
Yeah, so we actually have to use different riggers, narrower riggers, because we couldn't get the spread narrow enough with the able-bodied riggers. So that is one aspect that's different. It's also better for us that we kind of are experimenting still, but we think that it's probably better to not cross the oar handles, so we can get a better arc.
I don't know about that.
There's debate. My opinion and the other opinions, but then she's on the side of a lot of other smart people too. So, and also the oars are a lot shorter. Again, I'm not sure. I don't know what able-bodied rows, but we're probably about maybe 10 centimeters shorter, somewhere in there. And I'm actually going to be experimenting with cutting off another 10 centimeters off of that.
Off the blade?
Yeah, off the shaft.
Okay.
And then when we race, our stroke rates are usually a lot higher. Well, not a lot higher, but higher. Our racing is done around between a 39 and a 43, somewhere in there.
So China, who won gold medal at the Paralympics this year, they were like up at a 49.50 stroke rate per minute.
Yeah. The highest we've ever taken is a 60.
We stayed at like yeah, we got it to a 60 for like one stroke, and it was not pretty. It was just to see how high we could possibly get it. I think it was 60 and a half, and that half really counts because it's almost 61.
Yeah.
So, but like we race around like a 42 to a 44-ish.
Yeah, somewhere in there, depending
Whereas
on.
able-bodied probably like, I don't know, like the 8s probably go up to like a 38 maybe high or something like that.
But it's generally higher than able-bodied. And like I said, it's over 1,000 meters, so that makes it a little bit different. It took us about, our fastest time was 4:01 flat, I think. I think the world record's like 3:54 or something like that.
But that was China, and we don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well,
they just all of a sudden came with super fast times.
Their guy was twice my size,
and
their girl was twice my
female
size.
Either, if you look at that. Not making excuses, but
they're big. They were fast. And then finally, there's the arms and shoulders only, which is, I mean, self-explanatory. You can only really use your arms and your shoulders to move the boat. And I think we have, this is our compadre, Ron Harvey.
Yeah, he's the arms only.
Again, he's on a fixed seat. The difference with arms and shoulders, it's a single, so for whatever reason, they make us have the pontoons on there because.
Well, for these singles, they do
can't swim or whatever.
Your chest is strapped to the back of the seat, so you're literally only doing like arms and shoulders, and a lot of times, depending, because the stroke is so short, they will just row in the square for the race instead of feather and squaring, depending.
Yeah.
But
so the oars are even shorter than what we row.
It's pretty scary rowing in a boat and you're taped to it. It's a pretty scary feeling.
You have to have, not only do you have to have the legs strapped down, you have to have, as you can see the chest strap as well.
Yeah.
Because some people have a little bit more control of their trunk and they want to make it as even as possible. Again, the riggers are narrower, stroke rate's higher. I think Ron, somewhere in
45, 47.
What's that? Oh no, I mean it takes them like a five minutes something to get down the course, 1,000 meters. Yeah, those are the primary differences between the two, and like I said, you can treat any athlete as long as their lungs and everything is okay. There's really no reason why they can't match the same intensity or a percentage of their maximum intensity as they're training.
Now, with adaptive rowing, though, like the only thing since this law or whatever is going to get passed, where they have to allow, but they're going to allow disabled athletes in college, high school sports. It's time-consuming for the coach and for volunteers because it can sometimes take someone that's an arms-only rower take 30 minutes to get in the boat or 30 minutes to get on the erg, and then do the actual workout and then back. So it's time-consuming, and it's a very long process, very rewarding process, but it's very it takes a lot of patience too on the coach's part and a lot of volunteers and stuff.
It can tend. It's a lot. It's a pain in the butt. I'll be honest with you.
It can be.
Literally and figuratively. But there's also, we can still do the erg. It's you use that same Wintech seat that you can get, and you can also buy clamps that you basically just clamp. I mean, I can't really describe it. You'll understand it once you see it, but you buy these 2 clamps, and they clamp onto the I-beam part of the rower, and you just go to town on it. But back to the pain in the butt thing, the hardest part for us is not being able. It's really difficult. It's difficult to get out on the water by yourself. So a lot of the times, wherever you go, you have to get somebody to help you carry a boat because these things are awkward. And if a person in a wheelchair wanted to carry a boat, I don't even know how they do it. If I wanted to carry a boat, it'd be pretty precarious. I might be able to do it if it was flat enough, but as you know, you have to go down Mount Everest, down to the water pretty much every time, and you have to go back up because you can't have water and land next to each other. But I really think that Paralympic rowing is kind of embodies what it means to go after something, even though there's all these obstacles in your way. So for us, getting down to the water, carrying all this equipment that we need to carry, and sometimes having to get help with that, it's just really, and I think that carries over to able-bodied rowing as well, because everybody's going to have their own obstacles that they're going to have to deal with in order to get into a boat. And I think that carries over into life in general as well. But do you want to tell the story about how our equipment wasn't there and how we had to overcome that obstacle?
Be ready for that oh crap time or whatever earlier. This happened twice, so like in Serbia too, and in London.
Yeah,
so,
well, we had to, the 3 races that we had to go to, backstory, we had to win our trials race, which we did, and then we had to qualify for the Paralympics, which we did, and we won that race. So, and then the Paralympics was the 3rd big race.
So the qualifier for the Paralympics was in Serbia. What was it? Our oars, I think. And
yeah, that time the oars weren't there.
Yeah, so it was like our first international race, and it was the race to qualify for London. So in my opinion, you think it's not the most important race, but in my opinion, like the qualifying race for London's the hardest race, not the one when you're in London. Especially when you only have 2 crews. So 2 crews that make it go. And then we are in Serbia, our oars don't come, our equipment's not there, so we can't row for, was it like 3 days that we weren't in Serbia, we were on the ergs. Which is cool and all, but it's the ergs, it's not on the water. So you kept your fitness, but it was, but that's really where you gotta stay, cool, calm, and collected. Don't freak out. Like, oh my God, my oars aren't there. The competitors are having 3 days of practice and stuff. We get to London, same thing. Oars aren't there. Because we were used to it in Serbia, we knew how to react to it. Now, everything came and worked. We probably would have been like, what the heck? What's going to go wrong? But in Serbia or in London, our oars, I don't think the seats. The box, yeah, the seat and the oars weren't there.
And our riggers.
And our riggers weren't there. So we actually ended up, it was not that long. The box came, I think, the next day when we got to London. So we only spent a day with our seats not there and our equipment not there for the boat. And then the riggers is what took the longest, though. We had to actually, what ended up, they took a regular standard, like, slide seat rigger and welded it there on the spot. So it wasn't the rigger that we were used to practicing with. And of course, the guy who welded it was amazing, but it wasn't perfect either. It wasn't like completely level. There's going to be little kinks in there. So that was a very interesting time and trying to be positive, and that was very hard, but there's nothing you can do when it's out of your control, either something like that.
Tell them about trials.
Yeah, this one over here, we almost ruined it because, no, I'm joking.
Because I'm so strong. That's why.
Because, yeah, that's what I'm letting him believe so he can sleep at night. But we get to trials, and so we've been, at this point, training together in Florida for about three and a half months. And we drive our trailer with our coach, with our boat on it and our riggers. And the riggers were not the standard Wintec riggers that are normally come with a boat. They were some riggers that my coach actually welded together for the narrower spread, because at that time we didn't have the Wintec narrower rigger or whatever. So he goes to pick it up. I'm getting my seat out of my car, out of the truck, and then I look, and then there's half of the rigger in one hand and half of it is in the trailer, and the rigger is in half. And I'm like, do you laugh? Do you cry? Do you hit him? What do you do? Like, but luckily, there was someone there in Princeton that was able to weld it for us and got it together. But, you know, long story short, you gotta, excuse my French, but like shit's gonna happen, and you just gotta roll with it, and just don't freak out. It's wasted energy, anyways, that you could put in the race.
Yeah, so that all these things kind of show if something is important to you, then you will figure out a way to do it, and you will find the time for it. And if it's not, then well, you won't. But I think that our part of dealing with a disability and also rowing, you basically just have to figure out a way to do what you want to do. So part of my injury and the problem I had with my injury was I really liked working out in the gym before injury. And I really enjoyed doing like heavy deadlifts and squats and that kind of thing. And here I am with no knees. So how am I going to do all that stuff? And I'm thinking, well, I have no idea, but I thought about it, and I tried a bunch of different stuff, and I figured out ways to do stuff like deadlifts. I'll take a weight belt, and I'll tie myself to something sturdy like a squat rack, and I will do straight leg deadlifts. I think, okay, not to brag or anything, but I did 285 pounds. I was really proud of that. So I'm working my way back up to 2 times body weight, which is, you know, the gold standard.
With 285 written on each side.
Yeah, 285 pounds. I mean, British money is what I meant. And I can, it's stuff like that. And I figured out ways to do kettlebell swings. And I'm working on a way to do something similar to a squat. Obviously, it's not going to be a squat because I'm not using the quadriceps, but something like that. And then I also figured out how to ride a bike again. You know, if something's important to you, then you're gonna do it. And I think that it was obviously very important for us to do well in these races that we were at. So, despite the fact that
talk about the race, the last race, the final.
Yeah, despite the fact that I broke the rigger, and well, I think the ride broke the rigger.
No. He broke it. His finger broke it.
The rigger was broken, and we didn't have equipment. And in the biggest race of our lives, you know, twice. Yeah, we still figured it out. But what did you want to say? The last race?
The finals. The last race.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to tell the story of our last race if you guys want to hear the tale. So, a little bit of backstory. Our first race was against the Chinese, and we stuck with them for 500 meters, then they moved away from us, and we decided that...
That was a big mistake, first of all, because...
Well, we probably would have lost anyway, but... Yeah, we were burnout at the end of that. Our stroke rate was way too high, and we decided to bring it down over the next race.
Rowing our own race, we were trying to keep up with the other crew and row their race. So.
Yeah, and that plan worked for our repechage, so we made it to the finals, and we decided to keep the same plan. Now, it's important, I think, in these really high, stressful situations to make yourself laugh before them. Or I do stand-up comedy as a hobby, so I like to be funny. So, you know, I'm just joking all the way up to the line, and then I'm messing around with yeah. Well, okay. The singing thing. I'll tell you why I sing.
Very disturbing high-pitched singing that you got there.
I sang a song from Rocky.
You did.
And I'll tell you why, because
but it worked.
I like to read Greek history every now and then. My favorite book in the world is Gates of Fire. It's about the Battle of Thermopylae with the Spartans. And in that book, it talks about how the Spartans they really valued men that were strong and men that were courageous, but they also valued men that could sing, because before, when they were on battle line, they would sing to each other to relax each other. So I kind of took that from them, and I brought it to our race. I don't know if it worked.
It worked. I was super relaxed and laughing. Probably too relaxed.
There you go. But might be able to tell this in a minute. We're on the line, and we basically, our plan was to start slow and build towards the end. And because we knew that we were third fastest in every single race as far as times. And we kind of figured that everybody was going to be excited, so they were all going to blast off the line and then burn out towards the end. So we take off, and we're in 6th. And I'm kind of thinking, as we're going down, I really hope we were right about that. Because we're in 6th for a while. We were in 6th for 500 meters or so.
And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, oh my God, 500, and we're still in 6th place. This is like, you're 1,000 meters, and at 500, you're in last place. There's no way you go up, and you basically lost the race.
So we were in contention, though, at 500. We weren't really far behind or anything. It was all pretty tight.
We were behind.
In contention, though.
In contention, but behind.
And that was our plan, just be in contention at 500 meters, and then speed it up after 500 meters. So that's what we did, and everybody started falling back a little bit, and we just kind of slowly made our way. So at 250, we were probably in 4th. So we had this last 250. We had the spot picked out where we were going to sprint, and she said she's going to call the last 20. So at this point, we're still in 4th. We're catching the Brits. So we had passed the Ukrainians, the Italians, and we had passed the Australians. So we're doing our last 20. And she's talking about throwing out the bathroom sink. Because our coach would say, he would go along and he would be like, okay, loosen up the bolts, get ready to throw out the kitchen sink, and then the last 20, throw out the kitchen sink, throw out like empty the paint bank, all those cliche things that you can say. But she's saying that to me, and I can't feel my arms, and we're just going, and we cross the line. And there's a little screen over here that says, the places.
The Jumbotron tells
So immediately it says 1, China, 2, France.
3, nothing.
It doesn't have a 3. And I looked over immediately after break, like, they are really close to us. So
I thought they crossed first.
We're sitting there. It took about 15 seconds, and finally 3rd place.
It was a minute.
USA.
It was a minute before. It was not 15 seconds. It was a minute before they showed USA.
And we were like, yes. And we did a low 5, and then we walked away with this.
Oh yeah, we walked away with it.
Want to do a couple questions?
Yeah. Turns out we won by 0.2 seconds.
Question. Yeah.
If you're trying to find a coach, were you given one? Did you find one for yourselves? And with either of those, did he have experience with para-athletes, or did he have to learn everything on the fly? Or did you have to teach him, or what was his experience with it?
That's another thing about making things happen on your own, taking the initiative. When we went down to Florida, my coach at the time knew some people in Florida. Turns out he didn't know them very well, and he just kind of offered. It was interesting. My first coach and her first coach both had adaptive experience. And we went down to Florida. They did not have much adaptive experience at all. But it's all, you know, it's...
Super open-minded and willing, and it's not like they were like, you know, because not every day you see two people with no legs saying, hey, we're going to train for, you know, the Paralympics. They've never worked, probably let alone seen people with no legs. And they were very open and...
Yeah. And rowing is a really cerebral sport, so if you know how it works for able-bodied, it's not really hard to figure out how it's going to work for us, too.
It's exactly the same, and that's the cool thing. That's what I personally love about rowing is, like, in the boat, what you know, it's different what you do as opposed to like able-bodied to adaptive. But in the water with your oar, it's the same technique, same everything, same pull, same determination, and same craziness to keep going at it. So.
And that's kind of one thing you have to remember is that you can figure out how you need to do it. So. I got some strength and conditioning coaching from a gym out in Salt Lake City, and I went out there for a week, and he was like, what can you do, what can't you do? Let's figure out what you can and can't do and how well you can do it. So it's really like any other athlete. You just have to get to know the athlete, figure out their strengths, their weaknesses, what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, and then go from there.
Time for one last one.
Do you mix adaptive and able-bodied rowers in the same boat in any way, shape, or form?
You can do, there's some, like, that quad and a 4, I know you could put them either in, like, the bow of the boat or in the middle or whatever. There's no racing, but there's one woman who did it, Laura Schwanger, she's the arms only, and she did something for breast cancer. They had a boat that they put together, and they put her in that boat, and I believe she was in the middle of the boat. And it's doable, but I would probably like put them at the end. Yeah. Yeah, it's doable. I think pretty much anything is doable if you're willing to just take the time to be creative with it.
I know with blind individuals, they row with somebody, obviously. But the first time I rowed, I went out with somebody with able-bodied, and they just rowed arms and back. But obviously,
that's the way I was coached, actually, was with my coach. He would sit in the bow, and I would be in the stroke seat, and he would watch my technique and coach me from there. We'd row in the double for about, like, a long time, and before he put me in the single.
So I'd say it's probably a good way of teaching, but if you wanted to compete, obviously your arcs aren't going to be the same, and it's going to be really hard to rig it together, but it's definitely possible.
Guys, if somebody wants to get in contact with you, what would be the best way?
My email address is jonescpp@vt.edu.
Remember that.
Or you can email Mike and he can email me, because he has my email address.
Or you can just go to Team Bad Company and get in contact through that way too.
Yeah, you can do that too. Or we have a website, teambadcompanyrowing.com.
Team Bad Company.
Yeah, that's the name of our boat. It was originally named Mufasa.
Oh my God.
And I said...
The person who named it Mufasa thought it was cool. It was not cool, because if you're at the start line, someone says Mufasa or whatever, calls your boat.
Yeah.
No.
I was like, no, let's name it.
Cool.
Let's name it Bad
Company.
Company.
It's a lot better.
Guys, thanks so much. That was excellent.